There was one last part of that, which was the exact web service that we use. So I took a screenshot of it from the tenant. And so this was the example that we went to write customer letter. We wanted to deliver it automatically to the employee's personal document section, to the manager, and etc. So the integration system, the one that's going to be you're going to use to populate not populate, but to kick off the integration, inbound integration into the letter distribution for this business process, the request reference letter. So the inbound EIB that we're going to use, obviously you could call it whatever you want. I just call it merit letter distribution, so it's easy to recognize. And the template we're going to use is create reference letter for worker. It's a little bit hard to see, but that's the one that we use, and it's basically 2 columns on the Excel template. And I'm giving you a screenshot of that. From this integration system, once you set it up, you could download the template, and it's going to be like this. It's going to have 2 tabs on it. Just like whenever we upload something into a like a custom field, so it's done the same way. This is just the name of the field. Okay, so the template is going to be called create reference letter for worker, and then how do we link what we load into the business process, right? Like, how does the system know that for the employees that are part of this EIB, how does it know which business process to kick off? So under the overview tab, we have a column called business process. So here is the name of the business process that will be triggered, and it will take the employee numbers that are listed on the create reference letter for worker. And here's a screenshot of that screen. So spreadsheet key, employee number, and then the template. And this template is done through the Workday's document setup, where we have text blocks and calculated fields. So that basically right now I'm just showing like one, but obviously this would have everybody who's part of the compensation process. And once you load it, it will trigger the business process right here and send the letter to whichever groups that are listed here. So in this case, it's the employee itself, but you could also have manager, and then you could have after manager, you could have the employee.
And you can have different template or letter template attached to individual employees. I could see the column template there. You have the option to, if you go down in your Excel, here, the template, can I use a different template for different worker?
Yes. So you could have different templates. Like this could be a bonus letter for somebody. So this will tell the business process which template to pick up.
Okay.
And within this business process right here, in this step, behind this button that says configure document, the template is there. So you're going to need another for the appropriate letter.
Okay.
So I will leave this with you guys for that. And then we talked about like some of the audit reports. For some of the more of the consulting audit reports, and I couldn't think of an example like that, but like internal data cleanup that we use, we could definitely, and this is like a dashboard that I actually use. I created this for the HR team, and for example, this one says this is for compliance, like those employees who are missing this information and those who have any type of maintenance items. So this has, visa status, U.S., employees who already have a visa that has expired, and the number of employees who is expiring in the next 90 days. So yeah, in a way, like, yeah, you could, this could be like a data cleanup project, whether the request comes in internally or to an external. But I've seen this type of data dashboard at multiple companies, especially for visa status. So this is very critical that they keep this up to date, right?
Right.
Whenever there's that's about or like an I-9, they do need to update it and recertify.
So this dashboard you have custom created, or those fields or those dimensions are something that are already there? I mean, you're just leveraging those.
It's custom created. So the dashboard and the report is custom created. It doesn't exist. And you have to define it using the calculated fields. So basically, you look at the visa type, you look at the expiration date on it, and then see if it's in the past or it's in the coming up.
But this is something that you have thought through, right? Visa status is something that we need to audit on. So is there so? Or it is something Workday has recommended that these are some of the fields on which you should put the audit and keep checking on that from the maintenance or compliance perspective.
Yeah, so basically we have to, Workday doesn't, they don't give you a recommendation, but obviously you have to look at the business object where this is located, the visa or the I-9 form, and then you build a report on those objects. In this case, they're looking at the visa's expiration date. I just did another one for another client in which they didn't care about this. They cared about the document itself within the I-9. So instead of looking at the visa as a standalone object, in the US, for workers who work in the US, they need what's called the immigration verification that the person has a legal right to work here. They will that needs to be certified, and within that certification process, there are some documents. So they wanted to look at those documents if they have expired or not. So that one was built a little bit differently. That one was based on the I-9 form, and it has like section 1, 2, and 3, and then if the documents have expired or not. So that was a requirement that I had last week.
Sure. If I can ask you maybe your suggestion on one of the, maybe just I was thinking about what could be the consulting kind of requirement that we could have. So for example, if we have to peep into the system and look out for all the business processes at level 1, 2, 3 maybe, which has been already configured, and then at what level they have been leveraged also. Is that something that we can do with the help of any processes?
Actually, I have an example of this. I think, are you referring to something like this? Like, here's another one that I built. They want to see, like, what kind of transaction volume they had in the different types of business processes. So here we see that number of completed transactions year to date. So it says like 54,000. And then you see like the biggest chunk in here is this light green and dark green, which is the time off request. And then the second one is change org for workers. So basically a lot of cost centers being changed, a lot of custom organizations, employees being transferred. And then if you look at like some of the smaller values, like the yellow represents the compensation changes, so it's pretty small.
Understood. So where is it stored actually? Is it stored somewhere that we need to just pull?
Yeah, this is on the business process object. So there's actually the business process data you can get from there, and then right next to it, I put the number of corrections. So number of corrected workday transactions, right? Like when they do the transaction, someone needs to go back and fix it, right? So that is actually a concern that this client had. Their executive management had that concern. It's like they wanted to see the number of corrections, so that's an indication of how well their business processes are working, right? If there's a lot of corrections, that means something is not working right, or there's some kind of confusion. So we see that, It's not a huge number, but it's at least 4% of the transactions require a correction. And majority of them are in the proposed compensation hire. So the salary that's entered at the time of hire, that needs to get updated. Either the salary itself or some other element within the compensation. Like it could be maybe a plan, like an incentive plan was not assigned properly, or it was assigned when it should not have been assigned. So that type of corrections are happening, which is now under the attention of their leadership, and then they will dig into, okay, is this a problem with our integration? Is this a problem with our process? Like, how can we bring that down, right? Because every time you do a transaction, it's not like a 1 minute, fix. It takes at least 3 to 4 minutes to go back to the record, make the update, update all the updated, documentation. So it's like, you just multiply this at least by three or four for each time. And then also I have built like time to approve a number of days. Like there was a concern that the finance people were taking too long to approve something. So basically they want to know like the number of transactions that the finance team is taking longer than 3 days to approve, right? And compare that to just the regular number of open positions they have, and then how many it took them more than 3 days to approve. Like from the time that they got the step to the point where they approved it, it was more than 3 days. So an example of that type of audit.
Which BO it is referring to?
Which object? Let me pull it up on the other screen, and I'll give it to you in a second. And then right below that is it's about those security roles. So number of cost centers without department head or HR partner assigned. So in this particular client, they maintain their roles based on the cost center. And then every time there's a new cost center, you have to manually assign it. But then sometimes the department head terminates, right? Like once or twice a year, the department head might terminate. And then, someone has to remember to go and add in that role for that cost center. And, majority of the time, this is not really an issue because it happens so rarely. But even if it happens once, and it affects like 5 transactions, it just looks bad, right? It's not an efficient process. So it's better to just put it on a dashboard like this that alerts the HR admins if there's some kind of like miss. Like right now, you don't see any data because there's no one who matches the criteria for this report. And I was going to pull up the report for FP&A time to approve.
Even if you have not worked on maybe other dimensions, but you have thought through that, you can share those, and we will try to build it.
Yeah. I'm just putting up that dashboard.
Sure, we are on the same screen, just to let you know.
Okay, well, that's putting up because this dashboard, it does take a long time for the data to show up on there.
Yeah.
That's one problem with Workday dashboards. It takes about 30 to 40 seconds for the data to show up, which is almost kind of unacceptable.
I think it is directly pulling it from database.
Yeah. Okay, so let me actually take a screenshot of that and put it up here on this document, which I think will be super helpful. So this one is the FP&A approval more than 3 days. It's on the data source business process transactions, but then a whole bunch of calculated fields to bring in the position ID, and then there's an actual calculation for the date that happens before the FP&A step, and then the actual date for when the FP&A approves it. So let me dig into this and give you a screenshot of that. The actual FP&A approval date, I will get that. Okay, so for FP&A approval date field, so the first level is this one. It's going to be based on the event record, and then digging into the process history. There's one more layer, and let me pull that up and put it here. So this one looks at if the transaction is approved by the FP&A role, and then if it is, pick the one that's completed and pick the very first occurrence when you sort it by descending order. So the most recent transaction that is completed and is approved by FP&A. So that's the second layer of that calculated field. And then this particular condition, let me open that up and give you a screenshot of that. Okay, so this one says, go to the step, go to step F, which God, it's not showing up here. Where it says value specified in this filter, this is the actual create position step F, or like in my business process, right? In the
Just minimize
position
that
approval.
rectangle.
How do I do that?
Just, yeah, drag it to left from the right. Yeah, drag it to left. Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Yes, completely right.
Yeah. So it's the BP, create position, and then whichever step that you want. In my case, step F was the approval step by FP&A. So we're picking that up from the event record, and then the status has to be approved. So a multi-layered calculated field.
Okay.
All right, so that's an example of that. Also, the other example of the number of transactions that we had. So let me grab that.
Yeah. And if you have anything on the eligibility rule or eligibility configuration, whether how messy it is and how to clean it up, something like that, just try to show that as well.
The eligibility for what things?
No, generally the eligibility criteria are configured, right? And sometimes, I mean, those are not mutually exclusive and they overlap with each other. Somebody should not be given something and other says somebody should get this. So those kind of eligibility rules, if we have to find out, maybe clean it up.
Yeah.
So how to find it out and then clean up, because many people or developer may come in, create their own eligibility criteria, use it here and there. So how would you
Right.
the system
Yeah,
and find
there's
out
a
all those
good
kind of
one.
stuff?
You actually have a good example of a commission plan eligibility rule. And let me screenshot that over. Okay, so here we have commission plan, and then it's got an eligibility rule of sales incentive plan. And let me open that up and give you a screenshot of what's included in that one. So in this case, it's based on job families. Like if the employees in these particular job families, such as card sales, commercial sales, for that criteria, it basically says job family and job family group in the context of compensation in the selection list of these job families. So the plan is in the package, and the plan itself has these eligibility rules. So if the employee is in these values, then they will get this plan automatically. And if they're not in this job family, whenever you do a staffing transaction, the plan will come off their record. All right. So that's a good eligibility rule. So similar to this, I have one question like someone raised the other day, not from this class, but like in from someone else outside of this class. They said that they're facing an issue where whenever there is a manager change, the stock plan is coming off the worker. And so they wanted to know, like, why is that happening, right? So the stock plan they were referring to was the promotion stock and the new hire stock. And so just to repeat, they're saying that whenever there is a manager self-service transaction and all they do is do a manager change, they don't do any other change, but then they see that the plan is showing up as removed. And the reason behind that is the stock plans, they're not part of the package. And I suppose when they set it up, they did not want to make it part of the package because they don't want the stock plans to be assigned automatically. They want the ability to assign them manually, but not automatically. So the cure for this, put them in the package and then put some kind of criteria, tighter criteria that only if the hire date is, only if the hire date is within the next 3 weeks, then assign the stock plan. So, the plan won't get assigned to everybody. They don't have to worry about it being in the package. Or for the promotion stock, they could make it a job family based criteria. But if they add it to the package, then it won't fall off, and then it won't create that confusion. But as long as it's not in the package, it will come off whenever there's a staffing transaction. So that's what we have on these calculated fields and audit reports.
Sorry, I didn't understand clearly. So, like bonus, merit, these kind of things also need to be included in the package?
Not the bonus one, because they happen only once a year, right? Once or twice a year. And the practice is that when you're going to launch bonus or you're going to launch merit, then you assign the plan to them, to the population, and then after you're done with the merit process, you could remove it from the employees. So really, the actual merit plan and the bonus plan, it does not need to be in the package.
Okay, this stock is like the stock plan you are talking. It's not part of a merit process. It's just a hire related one. Okay, that
right, because the outside of the merit process, the new hires in the U.S., depending on the level, they do get stock, so they do need it outside of the compensation review process. And then also when someone gets promoted and they're at a certain level, then based on that, they get a promotional stock, which is outside of the compensation review process.
Okay, Ramesh, thank you.
Generally, when merit plan or bonus plan, those are assigned as a part of maybe assigned process, right? Do we also remove it intentionally after the process is run or completed?
You can do it. It doesn't do any damage. Some companies or some people have a practice that, okay, we will go ahead and remove it. You can do it. I have actually never. I just leave it there, and then when I'm doing it next time, if someone's not eligible for it, it's usually because they have terminated, or at that time, if they are moved from like sales to engineering, and if there's a different, they should not be on that plan, you could remove them. But yeah,
so if we don't remove them intentionally, or we don't remove them by the process, and in the next time, suppose they are not eligible for that plan, but because we have not removed it, that plan is still there on their profile. What happens then?
Well, in the project plan, right, there's always the audit step. Like you need, like every single time, you need to have them define the population that should be part of this process. And then you're going to run a report to see who has the plan assigned to them.
But for a huge organization of maybe 100,000 people or so, is it possible to find out those kind of maybe anomalies also? I mean, in your experience, what do you think? Should we remove or should we not?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably makes sense to remove it from a huge organization.
Is there any audit report which says the person is not eligible, but still the person has the plan assigned to?
No, you're not going to have a delivered audit report, but you could definitely make it yourself. For example, in the previous example of the commission plan, right? So one thing I need to make sure is the commission plan people are usually on sales, and if they were in engineering before and they had the engineering plan, when they had a job change, they, during that transaction, HR should have removed the engineering plan and assigned them the commission plan. But let's assume they did not do that. How do we catch it? Yeah. So at the time of the compensation review, I do have run an audit of the job family is such and such, and who does not have a particular plan. Like, give me somebody who's in engineering job families, but there is no plan assigned to them. Or I just run a headcount report with whatever plan that's assigned to them and just see, okay, here's the job families and see if they have the correct plan assigned to them.
Okay.
So you actually have to just create the audit reports yourself. The next topic I want to get to is you had asked about the data scrambler, and I did remember that I came across it once. I did not use it, but the functionality is there. So I thought I'll go ahead and just take the information from the community and share it with you guys. Okay. And I remember now why I did not use it. The data scrambler functionality is only available in the impl tenant, the implementation tenant. It is not available in Sandbox, and it is not available in Preview. So majority of the time, it just happens that Impl Tenant is not free. So a lot of companies don't have it. They have Sandbox, they have Preview. So I think that's why I came across it, but I never ended up actually using it because it's not available in Sandbox.
Okay.
But besides that, it is really cool functionality. So I'll just go through what is a data scrambler, and then what are the use cases for it, and then how does it affect compensation data, or what can you hide with the compensation data?
Hey, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features? Bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
Okay, so the use case was this is, if you're developing integrations, reports, and configurations, in that type of scenario, you could hide this data, or for testing or troubleshooting issues, or for using the tenant for training or demonstrations. You could create a data scramble plan and then hide certain pieces of data. I was actually trying to set this up in our tenant, but I could not do that. And then I realized it's because it's only available in implementation tenant. But it is pretty simple to set up. The task name is create data scramble plan, and you give the name of the plan. And then basically here is the list of different sections, and you select which fields that you want to hide. So there's a section for bank account, comments, compensation, contact information. And here's a full list of fields that can be scrambled. So bank account information can be scrambled, including the IBAN number. If someone is using Workday case management, the case note text and the case title can be scrambled. The email comment and the web address could be scrambled. And within compensation, the salary guidelines could be scrambled. The assignments, which is like the bonus plan assignment or the merit plan assignment, the pay ranges, the plans, the default values, the element names, the grades and the grade profiles, and the grade hierarchy. All of those items within the compensation area can be scrambled. And under contact, phone numbers and email, credit card numbers on the finance side or the expense side, and government IDs, which is the national identifier, date of birth, student ID, system username. If you request the username to be scrambled, then it will scramble all of them except the person who initiated the.
If we scramble employee ID, I mean, I thought there will never be a key field that will be in the list of this scrambling function, right? So if
this is the
employee
username.
ID,
Sorry, not the employee ID, the student ID.
No, the
not
one
the
that
employee
you
ID.
mentioned on the left side,
username.
in the IDs.
Yeah, here under system is the username. So my employee number is going to be, whatever the numeric value is, but then my name is associated with a Workday account user. So the usernames can be scrambled, except the user who is initiating the scramble. Their username will not be scrambled. tax IDs, and job classifications and the termination reason.
In the section of IDs.
Job
Ramesh?
classification. Job classification.
Ramesh, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
On the left side, if you look at the second last field, IDs.
Oh, employee ID. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I didn't notice that. You're right. The employee ID can be scrambled. Yes.
No, but if we scramble it, I mean, how the key field will match and all? I mean, employee ID is a key field, right?
Well, the employee ID is typically like on an informal level, that's the key, but every employee actually has a integration ID, and the integration ID is not listed here.
Okay.
So by default, the employee number has an integration ID, which is going to be the same. Yeah, so it's really, kind of makes it difficult to match anything.
Right. I mean, from the testing perspective, I mean, even if all those fields are scramblable, but from the testing perspective, we should not scramble all those things, right? Otherwise, it is very difficult for someone to work on it and then test it out, whether
Correct.
the configurations are
And I
working
think
properly.
you would make different scramble plans. Say like, okay, for testing scramble plan, and then in that one you have selected which sections to hide and which fields to hide, and then you can have a different one.
Right.
So you may have like 2 or 3 scramble plans.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so Workday recommends that you actually create the scramble plan in production. And then, so when implementation gets refreshed, the implementation tenant, then the scramble plan will go into implementation, and then from there you could execute it.
Right.
So once you have created the scramble plan and you have selected which fields, then there is the step just called generate data scramble values. So behind the scenes, Workday will scramble the values and get them ready, and then you have the start data scramble. So you choose the plan. This is a dropdown, and then you say, it's a little bit hard to read, but it says scramble values during planned weekly service update. Okay. So this needs to happen during the weekly service update. So like on Friday nights. Or you select this first one, it says restart tenant and scramble values. Scramble values immediately.
Yeah, actually, I was coming to that question that every week, but this is the implementation tenant only, right? So it may not
This
get
is
the stage
implementation. Yeah. So it's not going to be.
We can't do this in the stage. Yeah.
Yeah, we cannot do this in Sandbox. Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
So I mean, that's a huge drawback, right? Like I can't really use this.
That's a huge drawback. Right.
Yeah.
Generally, offshoring or outsourcing the production, or maybe at least non-production environment, is something that happens, right? And the remote access is then therefore given. So that's where this scrambling should be handy, so that the developers or non-production users should not be able to see the PII data. If it is not there in the stage, then what is the point?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So as long as they have the import tenant, then it makes sense. So this is just a before and after scramble. 24 hours. Yeah, it says 24 hours, and it depends on the load. So it's not like something you just do on an ad hoc basis. You schedule it for the weekly refresh.
24 hours.
Yeah. And then this is just an example of like Logan McNeil's name being changed, date of birth, and the marital status being changed.
Okay.
So some things to consider based on the Workday best practice. It said limit the number of users with access to create Scramble plans and run the Scramble process. So later on below, I will show you the domains that we need to use for it. So limit the number of users who have access to those domains, or the group that has access to that domain. The user performing the Scramble should have view access for user accounts if scrambling usernames. And then configure the Scramble plan in production for reusability. And then export and share the Scramble plans with others for careful review prior to starting the Scramble. So always have another person audit before you do it. And then start generate Scramble values with plenty of time before the maintenance window. So like maintenance window is usually Friday nights. So you would do this at the latest, like by Thursday night, you start it. And then carefully review scrambled results before allowing users to log in. Because you'll see a huge disclaimer that Workday does not guarantee that every piece of data is scrambled. Because there's always like more than one way to get to something.
Right. I have also seen that companies have their own data scramblers, maybe created outside the application, independent of the application, and they generally then use it for scrambling the application. Do you think it will be possible for Workday? I mean, Workday has any web services, I suppose, for this kind of?
You could use the web services to scramble the data using what's called the get and the put. And with that, you can basically modify, as long as you have the permissions, you can modify any piece of data using that. So that's using the web service. Another way is using bots, just from the front end. You create a script and run the script on the employee profiles to go into each profile and change it. I think there's a company called UiPath or Automation Anywhere. They make those bots, and some companies are actually using those bots to help them do transactions within Workday.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The capabilities with the data scramble that we could do in compensation, it could remove plan assignments. It could remove the target of the plan assignment only, or scramble the pay range, or override the plan values. So notice it doesn't say base salary, but base salary is also part of a plan, right? There's a salary plan. So with this, you could override the plan name and the plan default values. And then scramble the setup data like plan names, override compensation assignments. Like, they had a plan assignment with a particular, compensation amounts. And then scramble plans respective to total base pay. Anything that contributes to the total base pay, that could be scrambled as well.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as regards to this data scrambling, so any idea, like, do you know about the rationale why this functionality or feature is available only in production and implementation tenants? Because implementation is usually a development playground, right? And also the refresh can be deferred to a considerable extent over there. So it is not the production data which is readily available in implementation tenant, right? The refresh frequency is also less.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like just once every 6 months, like because you're doing long-term projects in implementation.
Yeah. So any idea like why is it not available in sandbox tenant? Because from use case standpoint, that is where the scrambling framework would come into picture quite often.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. I need it in sandbox, right? Because I also outsource work sometimes, and I really can't do that because it's not available. No, I get you, but I think it's just because I was going through the frequently asked questions and, how long it takes. It takes 24 hours to scramble it. Once we schedule it, it takes 24 hours. And then you cannot undo. So if you scramble it, the only way to get your data back is refresh the tenant. And that's also going to, for you to put in a request to refresh the tenant, that is also not immediate. That's also 24 hours from now. So basically your whole week is gone, and you would only get that scrambled data for maybe 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know what the rationale is, but I think it's probably it's very resource intensive. It's very resource intensive.
And also, in case of support projects, when implementation tenant is not around, it is only the sandbox preview and production tenant, then the only way to apply scrambling is in production tenant, right? And it becomes quite risky if you do it directly over there.
Yeah. Well, in production, we're only going to create the plan. It doesn't actually give you the ability to actually scramble the data. They're saying that create the plan, and then you could execute the plan in impl tenant. But yeah, you don't have the ability to actually execute it in production.
Okay.
Next couple of slides are basically, when it says goals, it's basically just a use case and then how to accomplish it. So if your goal is to protect actual compensation data, or the value that's in the reports, or the ability to initiate the compensation process, then if you want to accomplish that, then scramble all available compensation plan assignments by overriding original assignment values. So if you keep the plan assignments, but just override the value, so that way you can still initiate the comp process without the actual data being seen. And I got this screenshot from the community. Basically, it's before Scramble and after Scramble. Just the standard values over here, and then on the right-hand side were kind of silly values. They had replaced the 10 with like some other crazy number, and salary with other numbers. You also want to make sure, like, if someone is proxying in, you want that person who's doing the proxy not to see the information of the person they're proxying as. So they say you could do that by scrambling all available compensation plan assignments by overriding the original assignment value. And that way, even when you proxy in someone, you won't be able to see their own data. It's just another, I guess they're just trying to show that that use case can be accomplished. But obviously, if you're changing everybody's data, whether you're looking at it yourself or you're looking at it through a proxy, the data is going to be scrambled. Keep in mind, though, when you do scramble the data, it will affect, in impl tenant, in payroll, and benefit integrations will be affected, and the benefits eligibility will be affected because the eligibility is based on the date of birth. Its data is based on those personal fields. But then if those fields no longer make sense, then the eligibility is going to get screwed up. So if you have a corresponding project going on with respect to either benefits or integrations, there will be a serious impact to those to that other project. And then if you're doing compensation review, your testers they will need to know that the data that they're looking at is scrambled data. Okay, let me just go down to this particular screen. Can sandbox tenant be scrambled? No. Only implementation tenant can be scrambled. We are considering, this is from Workday community, so it says, we are considering enabling scrambling in sandbox for future release. So maybe sometime in the future, they will allow it for sandbox. Note, you can set up scramble plans in production, but cannot scramble production data. Okay. but at least it's on the roadmap for Sandbox.
There is no such limitation in when it comes to data masking, right? Data can be masked anywhere, including Sandbox, right?
Yes, even in, oh dang, I can't remember if it was in production or not. I think so. Like, you could mask the data for a consultant's account. You could say, okay, for that account, mask the data. Like, if that person is logged in, then they should not see certain fields. And yes, that functionality is available in production.
Okay. In production as well as in Sandbox.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So here, even though there's only like 4 steps for this, but in order to enable it, you have to go to the domain security policy called Scramble administration domain, and then you add in there the security groups that you want to enable them for data scrambling. So the domain is going to be Scrambler administration, and then activate. And then step 3 is create the data scramble plan, where you select the fields or select all fields, and the scramble method, which basically says, like, in terms of like name, you alternate consonants and vowels, whatever the methodology is to actually, scramble names. You select that. So that was step 3. And then step 4 was access the scramble plan and review it, verify it, that you have selected only the fields that you want Workday to scramble. And then number 5, have Workday refresh your implementation tenant from your production tenant by submitting a refresh tenant request in the Workday Customer Center. Okay. And then now you have the implementation tenant refreshed, and then you access the generate scramble values task. And then the first time you run the generate scramble task for your scrambled plan, Workday maps all field values to the scrambled plan, et cetera. You schedule it, and then you run it in step 7. And then somewhere it mentioned that it took like 24 hours to do it. And then, can I unscramble a scrambled tenant? No, you cannot. Scrambling is irreversible. So you cannot reverse it. The tenant must be refreshed using the refresh tenant request in order to remove the scrambled data. So you basically do a refresh from production to get your actual data back. How long will it take to scramble the data? Plan on the scramble generation process take 24 hours. Actual time depends on the number of instances to be scrambled. I guess it meant like the total number of instances, because the company is going to have 1 implementation tenant, or they might have like 3 implementation tenants. All right, so that's all I have on the data scramble. We do have some time, so if you guys want to ask any questions.
Do you have used this scrambler? Like, what kind of situations or you had used it?
What kind of situations? Well, they mentioned the use cases up here, right, earlier, that it's used for.
Correct. From your experience, which, like, when you had used it?
Oh, personally, I did not use it. I came across it once. So I was thinking about it, and then I like, oh yeah, there was, I did come across it once, but I never actually ended up using it. Okay. And I did not even end up using the data mask because I did hide it for one of my consultants, and then he could not run the benefit integration. Then I had to unmask the data for him. And then I was like, okay, my point was that I wanted to hide certain data from him, and it didn't work because then he couldn't run the integration. So it wasn't too practical for me.
And Ramesh, like, so you have like compensation review process related when you will use the implementation sandbox and production, like what are the stages you will use, which are all the tenants and all? Like if you use different ones, can you explain, or like which purpose you will do it?
Yeah. So the implementation tenant will be for projects, like projects that take, like a long-term project, like a 2-month or 3-month long project. You're going to do it in implementation tenant, and you keep the data stable there, and you may have multiple projects going on in there and say, for example, you might build your advanced comp plans in there and then launch it in there. Preview tenant, this gets used when twice a year Workday releases new features. So whatever you're building in implementation tenant or you're building in sandbox, you want to build it once in preview or test it in preview, so that you know that any of the new features are not going to have any kind of negative effect on your existing functionality or anything that you're building. So preview is used by Workday to push new releases before they get into production. And then they're usually updated with new features about 1 month before the features are released into production. So the timing is like beginning of March, there's the first release, and then in October or end of September is the second half release. And then so a month before that, preview gets refreshed from production, and then you do your testing and preparation for the first half release or the second half release. And then sandbox is for when you're done with your testing in Impl tenant, when you're migrating, you want to migrate it into sandbox, so you're testing it one more time against fresh data that resembles like real-time data. Because the input has been, is much earlier data. And then if everything works fine in sandbox, then once you get the sign off, you migrate it to production. And also you cannot migrate directly from implementation or preview. You cannot do it directly from those tenants into production. You got to go to sandbox, and then from sandbox you go to production.
Oh, it's like comp review process related work, like those and all, mostly you will do it in sandbox and production, is it? Or
well, even compensation reviews, you need at least 2 weeks for it. So, and that's only if you have done it a couple times, and all the stakeholders like HR and finance, they already know what to do, so they'll be able to give you all the final information. You got the information, you're going to set up the plans, you're going to roll it out, they're going to test it all within like 2 weeks. So you could do it in sandbox, because you could hold on the refresh for sandbox like for once every other week. So you could keep it from refreshing and do it in sandbox. But it gets risky, right? Because if you don't finish testing, then you're going to be like, okay, you're going to have to set it up again. But if it's a very agile company, then yeah, you could do it in sandbox and just keep it from refreshing. And then, of course, if we have some experience under our belt, we feel like we could just, we don't want to bother with preview tenant, and we'll just do it in sandbox real quick. And yeah, we could do that, because I like to work with like as real data as possible. So that helps from that angle. But it's not the best practice. It's just, okay, I know it's going to work, and I've done this like 5 times before.
You might have heard about compensation review calculation table, right? If you want to, it's pretty related to grade and update fields and all that.
Table. I've seen it in the documentation, but I have not come across a use case for it.
This is the task I have put up. If you can just put it in the screen, just try to open it and see what is the It was actually, I came across it when I was to create a custom calculation field on the merit and that bonus grade. That time, there were some calculation I was not able to do, and that time I used it. If you can just open this task.
What were you
Yeah.
trying to do with this task?
See, I was asking you some question on the grid, right? To create, if I had to create some custom field
Yeah.
on the grid, which would refer to the fields within the grid, which I was not
Right.
able to achieve through some calculated fields. That is where I saw this concept and I was going through that. If you can just
Okay.
maybe open this task in the screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to open it. I'm trying to see if there's any data inside there. Yeah, I'm trying to search for
So
something.
there are some fields on the configurable grid, right? That compensation grid, which are not editable.
Correct.
If you want
Yeah.
to create multiple updatable field, you can create from here and then include in the grid.
Yeah, I guess if you may want to use this to do those type of calculations, like how much is the bonus plan or how much is remaining. I've done it through calculated field. This is another way of doing it. I have not come across a use case for it.
Okay. That's okay. I mean, I was just thinking whether you have used it or not. That's it.
Yeah, I have
Just want
not.
to take that.